If you're anything like me, you love action games with plenty of style and tons of enemies to slice down. But personally, there's always been a genre of action games that I've had a hard time getting used to. Specifically, the Souls-like games. You know, the ones that require you to dodge and parry and counter, all while balancing your stamina bar and making sure that you never run too low. Unless you like getting wrecked by every enemy that you come across, then you'll end up right back at the last checkpoint, setting you back about 15 or so minutes that you'll have to do all over again. It's frustrating and not always the kind of experience I look for in my action games, but there are a few titles that walk on this tightrope between being a Souls-like and more of a hack and slash, and that's exactly where I think today's game fits into the picture. Wolong Fallen Dynasty caught my eye with the older Chinese aesthetic and partially demonic creatures out to rip you apart. Now personally, I think she can rip me apart with no complaints, but hey, I'm just saying, this is a new game from Team Ninja, the same people who brought us titles like Nioh, Stranger of Paradise, and Ninja Gaiden. What's interesting is how Wolong feels like that step that fits right between Nioh and Ninja Gaiden. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of discussion that's been going around talking about what makes a game a Souls-like. Some say it's the stamina bars, the bonfires, and the relentless enemies. Then others say it's the fact that you lose your experience each time you die and that you need to get revenge against the enemy to regain your strength. But personally, I'd call Wolong somewhat of a Souls-like, but there's mechanics here that make it into something much more. Like the fact that there isn't a traditional stamina bar, thankfully. So you have more range of movement inside and outside of battles without always worrying about if you're dodging, blocking, or running too much. Instead, we have a spirit gauge that gives us a totally different approach than what I've seen in any Souls-like. This is what replaces the stamina bar, and instead of punishing you for doing actions, it encourages you to be more aggressive with your attacks. Of course, if you spam away at enemies without paying attention, you can still get destroyed, so you can't just attack freely. It's something I appreciate more because the game is giving me the option to hack and slash away, while also showing me that it's my fault for getting too attack happy. You will get knocked down a peg or two if you don't try to find that right balance between both attack and defense. The spirit gauge will go to the positive side when you perform your combos well, but also go to the negative side when you block too much or keep taking damage. And when you're fully negative, that's when it gets very bad since you'll be more wide open to attacks. The only problem I experienced so far was how unreliable it is to parry attacks. And yeah, this could be a bit of a skill issue on my part, but I didn't find the parrying to be too easy to read on a lot of enemies. When you do land those parries, my god does it feel amazing. But there were times when I just couldn't get it right and I would get slaughtered. But there were also times when I did hit it and I just did not expect it to do so. I think maybe if blocking and parrying were the same button that would help, but instead parrying and dodging are the same button, which can be a little bit wonky. Now it does help when you do time your dodges so you can parry them and lead into a combo, but it's hard to tell when you will and won't parry while dodging. For combat, you have a range of weapons to choose from like swords and polearms, with bows and throwing knives that you can loot off of enemies too. And all that is pretty standard stuff, but I think it's actually the magic attacks that make a bigger difference here. From what I played in the demo, I was able to pull off 5 different magic attacks, all using fire. They came in really handy and each technique served its own purpose without feeling useless. I had a short range fireball, a spread shot fireball, I could spread fire across the ground somewhat like a trap, and I could also light my weapons on fire to do even more damage. And then there's the ultimate attack, which summons a phoenix to shoot out fireballs in front of you. And that one was pretty good for crowd control and bosses. The one thing I'll say that steers this game away from being a Souls-like is that it's easy? Don't get me wrong, I did have some trouble with fights for sure, but that feeling of helplessness was never there for very long. The most recent Souls game I played was Elden Ring, and although I'm not done with the game yet, I do feel like the open world approach makes things a bit more simple. You're fighting a really hard boss? Cool. Go somewhere else on the map and grind for more EXP and items for a bit and you will be fine. When you come back, you'll be that much stronger, and that's kind of how I handled those difficulty spikes. But for Wolong, I feel like the skills that we're given are really powerful just on their own. Taking away the heavy amounts of dodging and stamina watching makes this game into somewhat of a cautious hack and slash. if that even makes sense. Outside of the areas where it's better to be more stealthy to sneak around enemies and plan out your attack, it didn't really feel like I was ever rushing headfirst into death every time I would start a new fight against my enemies. It made me feel empowered to head into the next area with more confidence, even if the challenge would be something unexpected. But what you should always do is keep an eye on your morale level so you know if your next fight is going to be a cakewalk or a new circle of hell. The morale system acts as a level where you can tell where you stand overall against your enemies. If you have weaker weapons or haven't upgraded yourself enough at one of the flags, you'll see that your morale may not be enough against the enemies ahead of you. But that does also act as a challenge though, since you'll gain more experience for defeating enemies with a much higher morale than your own. But don't be fooled into thinking that your morale can only go up though, as a defeat can easily send your morale level back down. And that will make you even weaker when you go back for a revenge fight. But one cool thing here is that there's also online multiplayer. So you, your friends, or even some randoms can team up and fight enemies or bosses together. And trust me, my inner scrub was very pleased by this. But if you don't want to team up with real people, there's also a recruit feature that can summon NPCs to help you out too. I found this to be especially helpful in the final boss of the demo since he's much different of a challenge from what you faced prior. I didn't have much issue with the enemies like the tigers or even the giant mutant bird, but this last boss was something different. Dude starts off normal in his first phase and he seems like a total pushover. If you wanted to, you can slice and dice him up in a corner and leave him defenseless for most of the fight. It seemed like he was too easy until his next phase came and he mutated into whatever the hell this is. So now you gotta show off your skills while dodging and parrying to keep him off your ass. But it always goes back to that idea that you can go in guns blazing, but if you don't learn the mechanics, you're not gonna have a very fun time. But after fighting him time and time again, I could at least say that I learned more about my skills and I was able to practice everything the game had to offer me. It was during this fight where I got a better hang of my fire techniques that made a world of difference putting them in action. For as short of a demo as this was, it gave me a really good feeling about this game and has me hyped to pick it up, even if I know I'm going to rage a bit while playing it. But tell me what you think about this first impressions of the Wolong demo. If you played it for yourself, I would love to hear about your experiences too. Subscribe for more videos just like this one and I'll see you all in the next video.